Mr. Simbi, there has been a lot of events taking place around Zimbabwe and South Africa over the past few weeks. What is your view overall on the relationship between Zimbabwe and South Africa?
Well, I think that the relationship right now is going for the worst, especially when you see many organizations which are pushing for changes in South Africa. We have unions which are now going to the embassy, trying to force changes. They going with demands. We have also the ANC coming in with statements like we will come into Zimbabwe, we will meet whoever, even if it's not the will of the ruling parties. We have political parties like the EFF, which is making statements, forcing Zimbabweans to demonstrate in Zimbabwe. And I think the relationship is now turning for the West, especially when you see such pressure which is coming in from South Africa. And I think there is now a level of arrogance which the South Africans is now approaching Zimbabwean matters, an arrogance which we as Zimbabweans ourselves, we used to have this when in the 80s, in the 90s, when we looked at our neighbors, Mozambique, we looked at our neighbors, Zambia, and we were the last country to be out of independence then. We were a new star then that was coming from colonization, where we still had industries which were thriving. Our economy was still thriving back then. And we have a certain level of arrogance, which now the South Africans are developing towards Zimbabwe. When they look at us and they look at how our economy has come, they think that they are now superior to Zimbabweans, and now they have that right, which they are now coming in to think that they can force events in Zimbabwe. And I'll go back to Zimbabwe. The level of arrogance which we had when we looked at Mozambicans, we used to call them Wafudzamondo. They were cattle headers, and we used to make fun of our Zambian colleagues, saying that when you are given money which was not adequate, you will say, you have given me some kwachas. But right now, as we look now, how humbled we are now as a country, that we no longer have a currency, but we used to make fun of countries like Zambia and Mozambique, which were instrumental in in our liberation struggle, because our bases, our Zanla bases were in Mozambique, our Zapu bases were also in Zambia, but we sort of had a superiority complex after independence, where we saw that we thought that we were superior, up to a stage when we now repossessed the levers of our economy. Now we see our place in our region, that Mozambique and Zambia, our elder brothers. And South Africa now is also having this mentality where it's now forgetting that for it to be independent, to gain independence the way it got independence, it was Zimbabwe which played an instrumental role, where even so Zapu contributing with troops there to help out fight the leaders like Jacob Zuma, Thabo Mbeki were in exile in Zimbabwe here, getting documents to live in Zimbabwe when they were waging war against the apartheid regime. And now they now get this superiority complex, where they can think that they can force changes in Zimbabwe, they can affect the political climate in Zimbabwe, which is very unfortunate and very arrogant. And very soon, if they continue like this, they will be humbled just the way we are, and they will know their place, that they are young brothers. And even the battles we are fighting right now, when it comes to land question, all those things, these are things which they want to also do. So they think that these issues, like you take land from the you repossess it, there are no consequences. There will not be sanctions which are leveled on you. So there's a level of arrogance and the lack of history of knowing where we came from as two countries. And this idea of thinking that they are now they are the ones who have an economy which is thriving, now they can impose anything they want, is quite dangerous to our two relationships. And they should back off. I have to say this. They should back off from Zimbabwe and let Zimbabwe, because some of the fights we are engaging in, there are things which they also want to engage in. They want to also appropriate land from white farmers. So they should actually learn from Zimbabwe and see what is the effects of engaging in some of these issues. And that's all I can say, right?
Okay, you raised a number of points, and I think we need to go into a bit of detail. You said South Africans are being arrogant. Is this South African government or South Africans as citizens?
Well, it's now it's a bit of both. Sometimes it's a bit of those both, especially when you see some of these marches which they plan, let's march, let's repossess our country. These are South African citizens which are engaged in these acts, and we also see people like the president himself. You know, the statements which he said, and even senior government officials. You know, the finance minister. Some of the statements he says. You know, and even the laws which are now being passed. You know, try to ban the sale of tuck shops. You know, from foreign nationals. So it's a bit of both, and. We as Zimbabwe, you know, we were in a similar position, and now we are humbled because we also had this level of arrogance, which is now in the South African government, in the South African society also, that of thinking that we can impose when we are even it's the youngest country in the region. South Africa, it's one of the youngest countries, and it's now acting like it's a big brother. And you know, in African culture, you know, it doesn't matter if your young brother is richer than you. An elder must be respected, and his wishes must be respected. Because you know what, as a firstborn myself, and I can tell you, there are sacrifices which I had done even at family level for my young siblings to be where they are, and for my young siblings because they are the first ones to have money or be rich, to now come and say, hey, to come and affect the affairs of my household. That won't be possible in any regard whatsoever. So this is a warning which we can give to South Africans, that this position they have, that yes, their economy is greater than ours, but this can be temporary. As we saw as Zimbabweans, that when we now started to have these programs empowering our local citizens, that's when we saw that that's the place we are. We are now failing to manage even our currency, when we even made fun of Zambians and their cultures, but they never reached the stage where they use dollar more than their own currency. So this is the warning which I can give to South Africa. Yes, it may be rosy, whatever, the country may be booming and it can be a joy for everyone. But if we have this level of arrogance coming in both the society and both the government, very soon, very, very, very soon, you might be humbled and you might fail to find a place of safe homage when you are humbled.
Okay, I want to quickly play a video of one of the unions that went and marched on the Zimbabwe embassy a week ago. And then I'll ask you my next question.
Practically, the regime of Mnangagwa is doing everything else possible to clamp down on dissent. The people of Zimbabwe cannot speak, and that is why we are here to speak for themselves. I think that there's a crisis of human rights that the AU is failing to address.
Some of NUMSA's demands are contained in their memorandum include free speech for all, media freedom, freedom of association, and a release of political prisoners. A Zimbabwean High Commission official accepted the NUMSA memorandum.
I'm saying the memorandum, we are going to go through it, see where it's supposed to go. Then we will deliver it where it's supposed to go.
This memorandum is a memorandum which is directed at Zimbabwean government. So you don't need to research. Okay. It's a memorandum that is directed at the regime of President Mnangagwa. So can you confirm that you will help us to ensure that this memorandum and grievances do reach the office in Zimbabwe?
The embassy will send the memorandum to the government of Zimbabwe.
Thank you. Comrades.
Right, you saw that. That was NUMSA They are saying that there is human rights abuses in Zimbabwe. There's no media freedom. The government is mismanaging the economy. That's why Zimbabweans are rushing to South Africa. Is that not correct?
Well, these are things which have not yet been substantiated. You know, the issue of human rights. Yes, you know, it's one of the mainly contested thing which has gone to which has been dominating with the media circles. Human rights in Zimbabwe, human rights, and I the definition of human right, I think it's one of the things which is yet to be really substantiated, to be understand that what is human rights. You know, what is human rights? Are they not voices which are allowed to speak in Zimbabwe? Because people can speak and can criticize anyone in Zimbabwe. The president can be made fun of, and I have never seen anyone in Zimbabwe think that you can remove a government through what? Through demonstrations. And I think this is the major issue which the government was trying to clamp down on the demonstration which was planned on the 31st of August. It was 31st of August, the 31st of August, July this year. The government was trying to clamp down on a situation where people now believe that for leadership changes in Zimbabwe, a demonstration can be able to what? To achieve that. So preventing that scenario of having, because it was obviously going to be a violent event, the 31st of July. It was going to be violent because people already think that to change government in Zimbabwe, you change it using what? Using a military coup, which is so in chapter 8 of my book, there's a topic which is Zimbabwe's succession, quagmire, and Nelson Chamisa's options. So here I talk about some lessons which we can learn from the United States of America, and also to some extent South Africa, on presidencies, on leadership changes. So in the United States of America, their founding president, in George Washington, was able to hand over power just after 2 terms, when there was no president for what? For changing power. And in South Africa, I also given an example of Nelson Mandela, who was able to hand over power just after 1 term. But the problem with South Africa now is that Nelson Mandela, when he set that president, these other presidents which followed are now failing to what? To set similar presidents on the smooth transfer of power. You saw Thabo Mbeki. Thabo Mbeki did not finish his term. Before the term finished, he was recalled. You know, so we have nothing to learn from South Africa in terms of smooth transfer of power from one administration to the other. They can try to think that they are superior, but there is nothing to learn from South Africa. Just after Thabo Mbeki had that recall, we also saw that Jacob Zuma, he did not also finish his term. He was recalled before finishing his term. So we also see Cyril Ramaphosa. There are also now cause for him to what? To leave office right now because of the CR7 campaign. So we have nothing to learn from South Africa in terms of smooth transfer of power from one administration to the other, because the president they first made when they recalled Thabo Mbeki is now a president which is now there. So in Zimbabwe, because of the military coup there, people now think that you can change governments by demonstrating. So to prevent some of these issues, that the demonstration which was planned on the 31st of November, the government had to act to prevent that demonstration, because people now think that leadership in Zimbabwe can be changed through what? Through demonstration. And it's a precedent which we now have to sort out right now. That's why we're saying we cannot learn it from South Africa, because South Africa does not have a president in smooth transfer of power. But we as Zimbabweans are the ones who can really sit down and see that we fix this issue. Because people, when you see ZANU-PF must go, those hashtags, you really see that people have that thinking that they can change the government through demonstrations, through moving in the street. So there had to be a prevention of that, of the 31st of July thing, because it would have led to serious bloodshed, because people would have demonstrated thinking that they can really change the government. So yes, a few people here arrested for trying to incite violence. Those are the measures which had to be taken to prevent people from thinking that government can be changed through what? Through demonstrating. So, but I don't see that in Zimbabwe you are not allowed to say whatever you want. You can say whatever you want, you can criticize the government, but forcing people to come now in the streets to demonstrate, especially in these COVID times, that's where now you have a problem with the government.
Okay. I want to go to what you said about Zimbabwe assisting South Africa during their war of liberation or during apartheid. We see that there's not a huge number of South Africans who came to Zimbabwe. Only a few of their leaders in their military wing was in Zimbabwe. But in South Africa, we've got between 4 million and 6 million Zimbabweans. Is it not right for South Africans to demand that Zimbabweans should leave and sort out their own affairs and stay in their own country?
Well, historically, that argument can be also made to say that 20% of the population, which is in Zimbabwe, originated from a South African tribe called the Zulu tribe. And we do not see our government, we do not see even this country complaining about that. They are well settled in the area of Matabele, and they enjoy political rights just as anyone else in Zimbabwe can enjoy them. So to say that there are 4 million Zimbabweans who are there, there is also 20% of the population of Zimbabwe which originated from South Africa, and I do not want to go to what the reasons why they left South Africa, but we know that there's 20% of population which originated from a Zulu tribe which is there in South Africa. So to have these issues to say they are now Zimbabweans here, they are now Zimbabweans, and trying to play the superiority card in whatever else, we will not hear that. We will not hear that. It's just arrogance which is now creeping into the South African population. Our population in Zimbabwe also, you have to take note that there are significant percentages of these countries I talked about, Mozambicans, Malawians, which also make up the population of Zimbabwe. But we as Zimbabweans, to some extent, we can say we're arrogant, but we never reached the extent of the level which South Africa is now demanding from its fellow citizens, the Nigerians, the Zimbabweans, trying to demonstrate in that way. We never did that as Zimbabweans when we housed. So we have not a huge number of naturalized Malawians which own houses in Highfield, Mbare, they were part of our population, were part of who left their countries due to economic reasons or whatever reasons, but they are part of our population, and we naturalized them, and they are part of the Zimbabwean. Mozambicans also, there is a significant portion of them which are here, and the South Africans in pre-East, that tribe which is here, which is part of the Zimbabwean culture. So to say that there are 4 million Zimbabweans and trying to put an argument like that, it's something which so they have to be sure that they will maintain their economic dominance. They have to make sure that they maintain their superiority in terms of economics, because if they are humbled, there will be no way to run in South Africa.
Okay, so what is your thinking on the march that is going to be held on 16 October on the Home Affairs Department? Zimbabwe is failing to produce passports. So most of the Zimbabweans who are here are illegal. Do you also blame that on the South Africans? Why can't Zimbabwe produce passports and so that people can travel legally?
Well, there are challenges obviously in Zimbabwe, and obviously there's been a certain level of isolation, in terms of this country, in terms of the world, due to the policies which even South Africa wants to also implement these policies. And you saw when they started to talk about expropriation without compensation, how the United States president, even in Donald Trump, warned South Africa of taking a similar action. So these are the conditions which Zimbabwe has been under, that of international isolation. It cannot sell its products, it cannot get international assistance, it cannot get loans on some of these issues. And maybe there has been also an issue where we can also blame ourselves as Zimbabweans, that we failed to produce things which we should have produced because of political issues internally, where we were used to this entitlement motto, where people are entitled, and they failed to institute clear decision-making rules that there would be production of certain things. I'll give you an example of motor vehicles. There was a bill which was rejected by the parliament, which had both MDC and ZANU-PF in the unity day periods, where they persisted with the importation of second-hand vehicles. So to some extent, yes, we do take the blame that we were not bold enough to know the issues which entailed us to be producers and us to really fend for ourselves. Yes, right now we see that there's some improvements. We are starting now to produce number plates alone, but still more for the passports, the paper now we import it from somewhere else. And these are some of the things which, as a country, we failed, to make changes on. So we will not blame South Africa there, but I think the whole political spectrum had an issue of entitlement where we failed to deal with some of these issues, and we now becoming a burden to other countries. Yes, but I believe trying to now force changes in the governance now in Zimbabwe, where we see a level of humiliation, coming when you play that clip, there's an issue of humiliation where you see the unions addressing using harsh languages. The ambassador of Zimbabwe in South Africa, the embassy of Zimbabwe. I believe it's uncalled for some of these actions which South Africans are engaging in. They have to be more patient with us as Zimbabweans. When we approached them, I think it's in 2018, before the demonstrations, we approached them with a request for some financial assistance. That was before the January incident when we saw death. We wanted assistance from our fellow comrades, the South Africans, and they laughed at us for even coming there. And I still remember this being reported in South African media, where they published it. We denied a loan request we received from Zimbabwe. So Zimbabwe has been on its own and for a long time, and it has not had proper financial assistance. And for the issues of the money which we also had, we have also used it in things which are not beneficial to the majority of Zimbabweans because of the entitlement issues which we had previously. When the ministers were entitled to have, it took us. They just maintained that without concentrating on what. And this also goes even to the opposition itself. It's part of this decision-making process. The major problem, I think, in Zimbabwe is we concentrate too much on short-term things, the short game, elections. When this bill was denied, people said that we will lose the next election, even in both camps, where the NDC was not here. So some of the issues, yes, we have to look at ourselves as Zimbabweans. And but now this position where South Africans try to force us into doing certain things, I think it will be very dangerous for this relationship between Zimbabwe and South Africa.
Okay, so Mr. Simbi, as you can see, today I'm operating from my car. We're having electrical challenges here in South Africa, and these are worsening. Unemployment is worsening, and the economy is not doing well. Corruption is high. There were arrests this week of more than 10 senior ANC leaders. So the situation you're talking about is coming, where the economy is going to crumble. How long do you think Zimbabweans have here before they have to leave, the millions of Zimbabweans that are here?
Well, I think the dark cloud which was on Zimbabwe right now is slowly lifting. You know, the dark cloud which is on Zimbabwe is slowly lifting, and you know, there are changes which are positive, which are happening in Zimbabwe. Yes, I know that the major problems, which are the political issues now, these are the only issues which are now outstanding. If we fix the politics right now, I think the base is now there. Currency stability is now there, and I think that issue of land, you know, South Africa also has to learn from it. Should it do a violent land repossession like we did as Zimbabweans, then later on still more compromise and compensate those who were there? Because you see, we can run away and say, if we do not have support from our partners like South Africa and the countries which also did want to have a similar policy, you will not achieve anything. So as Zimbabwe, we have been an example which South Africa can learn from in some of these policies which it wants also to implement, that sometimes you have to compromise and find closure on some of these issues and move on. So I think in Zimbabwe, I think the dark cloud which was there in terms of the whites, in terms of land issue, I think it's now slowly coming to a closure. And even the whites themselves, they recognize that if they also don't compromise, you know, they won't be able to go back to those farms. You saw it with the eviction of Grobler. It was just a sign of showing you that yes, we can compensate you, but there's much more you need to be safe in Zimbabwe, and everyone has to compromise. I've always said that in Zimbabwe, everyone has to compromise. He has to compromise to find closure. And in Zimbabwe, I think right now we gave a warning to the opposition that if Nelson Chamisa does not compromise, you see, and right now you see what's happening there. We also gave a warning to Emmerson Mnangagwa that you should also allow these G40 elements which are in South Africa, which are pushing some of these organizations to have marches like that. You don't need enemies like that, you know. You don't need enemies like that outside. You need to just compromise and let them come in and let build this country moving forward. You know, these are the things which are now outstanding. You know, these are the only things which are now outstanding, where we bring everyone together now and compromise and move forward as a country. But I think the best is now there. There's now the relative current stability, which we did not see in the country for a number of years. Yes, the other outstanding issue is to do with salaries for teachers, which, you know, in the previous, the ministers would say it's futile to increase salaries for teachers, because the moment you increase, everything also goes up. So they have to do it in stages, and these are the things which are happening in Zimbabwe, I think. But overall, at the moment, I think there are some signs that Zimbabwe is now on the rise. Obviously, there are just a few issues to do with the political environment where people have to come together, and the president has to compromise with even people who are outside. You don't need enemies like those outside the G40s outside.
Okay, so I want to end with a Facebook post that I saw on Hopo Chingono's Facebook page. He says, yes, for a young Zimbabwean, it is better to leave than to stay in Zimbabwe. A young man who was in Zimbabwe in 2000, by now, he's still unemployed, doesn't have a house, doesn't have a car. But one who left and went to South Africa now has a car, now has a house. What do you say about that? Should young Zimbabweans leave the country?
Well, it depends with the matter of the person. You know, the economy right now in Zimbabwe, it's you see there is an emergency of people who are now industrial leaders. You know, even at young ages. You know, people work for a few years and they decide to say, "Oh, let me start my own things." And I think it's these shifts in terms of people moving from always trying to be employed to be creators of employment. They take time, you know. It takes time in the mentality of a person, and it takes environment. It takes a environment swing to achieve this. And we see there are young Zimbabweans of our age who are now starting significant companies, who are now involving themselves in business, and who are now reaching a level of partnerships. You see, that was the major problem. Even Mugabe commented this, that when Africans or when us as Zimbabweans wanted to start businesses, we would just start as relatives only. So right now, I think there's now an issue where Zimbabweans are now collaborating. You know, we see it in the arts industry, where we see productions like the College Connect, we see the Gonyets, we see even in the media industries, people with the channels like yourself and others who are in Zimbabwe right now. There is more of a partnership level type of engagement, and this I also seen in my first job in Zimbabwe here, because I was an accounts consultant where I would analyze businesses in Zimbabwe. One of the major weaknesses was that they lacked governance in terms of it would be a relative business where it would be like a family type of business where there would be lack of governance in terms of the wife can just come and do some drawings without any concrete agreements on this. And the business I saw thriving where businesses made through partnerships where people are unrelated, they share the skills and they have to account to each other as Black Zimbabweans. And these are the businesses which I saw thriving. But except so these are things which take time, the concept of cross skill sharing, where we are not in the same profession, but you sit down and say this is a business, and professionalizing. These are things which are now happening in Zimbabwe. There are young Zimbabweans which are engaging in these things, and the greatest example is in the music industry, where you see collaborations, you see people helping each other. These are things which did not happen in Zimbabwe previously, and that's why even Mugabe will say there's an interview of his 90th birthday where he talked about this, where Ramatambo, they will just employ each other as brother and sister, and that those companies lacked governance. So we see now that these are companies which are now coming in. Even if the economy opens up to investment right now, there will be a significant part of it which will be truly owned by Zimbabweans, whether the farms, these are industries which now Zimbabweans are now getting, and it takes a long time to be a person who wanted to be employed, to be an owner of a thriving farm, to be an owner of a thriving company, and it also takes these issues of governance. And I can even go into the politics itself, where we see that the major problem in Zimbabwe is these organizations which are just made on a certain profession, lawyers associations, doctors associations, teachers associations, all these, they come in with the different demands. They will just say, as lawyers, we want 17,000 per hour for legal services. As teachers, we want this salary, without looking at the broader spectrum of decisions of corporate governance. And these are the things that this is where we want to go, where we make decisions as a unit, as different professions, as different skill sets, to have a balanced approach in anything we do. So these are the things which we need to iron out as Zimbabweans, how we make decisions as a collective, not this our political systems are crumbling because of that. There is a lack of broad consensus over the spectrum.
Okay, Mr. Simbi, it's been very, very nice talking to you, and I think I've also changed the way I think about this very topic. I think let's go through what you said. You said South Africans are being arrogant, believing that because they've got a stronger economy, the region or Zimbabweans and Nigerians are not important to them. You then went on to say that a time is coming when that economy is going to crumble and they will be in a worse off position than Zimbabweans. But because they've damaged the relationship, they won't have anywhere to go. You also touched on the issue of what is happening now in Zimbabwe in terms of young people, that they should not always think about leaving to look for a job, but they should also think about capitalizing on the opportunities that are there in Zimbabwe in terms of starting their own businesses and managing them well. Then, obviously, you talked a lot about the current situation, human rights. You say that it's not actually a matter of human rights, but it's a matter of the Zimbabwe government trying to let people know that you cannot change a government through demonstrations. And South Africa has failed in that regard. Is there anything else that I have left?
Yeah, perfect. You have interpreted it well.
Okay. I like the clarity that you have. And I like what you said about compromising. That the government wants everyone to compromise. The opposition must compromise. The government themselves must compromise. And even the region must compromise. People who are in the diaspora, people like Xavier Kasukwere, they must compromise, but ZANU-PF must also let them in. Is there anything else that you want to say before we close?
There's nothing else. Thank you very much for the opportunity you've given me.
Okay, we promised people that we'll give them one of your books, or those ones who want the books. There is a few people who came to me to request the books. So I'm going to forward you the names. I don't know if anyone has come to you. Some of them I gave them your name and your number.
Okay.
But for anyone who's watching who wants the book, they can WhatsApp you on the number that is on the screen. I'm going to pay for the book. Any book that you give, we've got 5 books to give away. So let me know when people have collected, then I'll pay for the book.
Okay.
Right. And I apologize for the setup today. I have to work from my car because I had to drive away from my house. There's no electricity, so the network becomes very weak. So I hope that next week we'll be able to come back and be back on in studio where I can control things much better. Thank you very much, Mr. Simbi, and we'll talk again next week.
Thank you, Mr. Gamba.